Well, good morning and welcome to Wake Up in the Word. Mm. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. We are in 24 days of joy in the book of Philippians, and today, getting to the beautiful testimony of someone who was willing to give himself for the ministry to the point of risking his life. And I do today in honor of many of those who right now are serving us in the healthcare industry or other areas in which they literally are putting their lives on the line, working extra hours and long hours to take care of us in the midst of an outbreak of COVID-19 that's affecting literally the whole world. So, folks, as we look at this today, I'm reminded of how yesterday we looked at another special servant in the Lord, and that was Timothy. Paul talked about his tremendous relationship with him. What a blessing it was. Today, we have a different person beginning in verse 25. Now, Timothy is a very common name. I have a son in law named Timothy. Many people around the world are named Timothy, or the short for that, Tim. But you're not going to find many people with the next name. In verse 25, he says, I think it necessary to send back to you Epaphroditus. Now, that's a mouthful. I really don't know of anyone named Epaphroditus today. Might be on the other side of the world when you get back into the Mediterranean, perhaps. But, and I've never run into anyone who said, we're considering names for our boy that's about to be born. And, we're thinking about Paul and David and Chris and Epaphroditus. No, you just don't hear that, do you? But here's a very special guy. It might be a hard, long name to pronounce, but listen to what Paul says of him. He says, Epaphroditus, my brother, fellow worker, and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger, whom you sent to take care of my needs. So here's a guy that God has really been using. He's the behind the scenes kind of person who has done all he can to keep the ministry of the Apostle Paul blooming and to serve the churches. It says of him in verse 26 that he longs for all of you, of course, talking about the church back at Philippi, and is distressed because you heard that he was ill. Now, there's nothing that makes us more distressed than perhaps to hear there is a loved one that is ill, that's sick, perhaps that we know, and we can't go to them and can't make any kind of contact with them. Well, now, back in this day, they couldn't even send a text, okay? I mean, there was no way to communicate. They heard Epaphroditus was ill. They didn't know the circumstances, and the only news they could get might take days, maybe even weeks to get there. Well, nowadays, we're having some similarly distressing times, and it frustrates us. We've had folks in the hospital all this week. We have some people that love to go see now, can't go, not allowed to visit in the hospitals. We've got to be careful during this coronavirus outbreak of COVID-19. We have got to secure ourselves as best possible. And about the last thing you need is a preacher that's going to go visit sick people, pick up their germs, and spread them to others. I understand. But it's frustrating, isn't it? For those of us who have been used to that kind of lifestyle who now have to restrict it. But think about something. We have healthcare workers that have to work in those kind of environments each and every day. When you finish this video, I would suggest take a minute before you do anything else and think of every single person you know by name that you can call out, that's a doctor, that's a nurse, that's an EMT, any of those people working on the front lines of this, and lift their name in prayer right now because they need to be protected. They have precautions, of course, uh, to keep them from getting sick. But all around the world, we're hearing of healthcare workers getting sick. One of the first doctors that reported on COVID-19 from China has died of it. So, friends, let's be very careful and pray for those in those kind of positions and situations. Well, Epaphroditus apparently had a desperate illness. We don't know what it was. We couldn't even tell you. But Paul does elaborate in verse 27 by saying, indeed, he was ill and he almost died. And here's something that I want you to grasp. Whenever we hear of someone that is sick, that is ill, yes, we need to get them the best medical treatment possible, but do not discount the fact that the very first thing we should be doing is praying, because the prayers of God's people do make a difference. Here, Paul says that about Epaphroditus, but God had mercy on him. and not on him only, but also on me, to spare me sorrow upon sorrow. Therefore, I am all the more encouraged to send him, so that when you see him again, you may be glad, and I may have less anxiety. So Paul was thrilled to be able to say, hey, Epaphroditus has recovered. He's on his way back to you. Welcome him with open arms. He says in verse 29, welcome him in the Lord with great joy and honor men like him, because he almost died for the work of Christ, risking his life to make up for the help you could not give me. In other words, not to say you were withholding it, but you couldn't be there personally the way Epaphroditus could be. He was your hands and feet in ministry when you couldn't be here at my side. A beautiful picture of just how much we depend on others to sometimes minister for us, whether it's the missionary in a foreign country or the other side of the country of our own country, or the person that is on the front lines of medical ministry in these days. These are the people that do the hard work. We need to lift them up in prayer and appreciate them. And look at what the word joy keeps popping up all throughout this little book of Philippians. Welcome him in the Lord with great joy and honor men and women like him. So we honor today those who are out there on the front lines doing the best they can to take care of a difficult situation. We honor you and thank the Lord for you each and every day. May the joy of the Lord be your strength as you serve him. And remember, stay not only equipped physically and equipped mentally with the things you know about the task that you're facing, but be sure to equip yourself spiritually each and every day as we get in the Word and wake up with it every single day right here. Thank you for joining me. We'll do this again tomorrow right here on Wake Up in the Word.